Hi, I'm Nihui. This video is to talk about the 4 projects in my portfolio. So overall, my practice looks at memory as something constructed, edited, and often displayed onto images, objects, and spaces. I'm interested in what remains when the person who should explain the story is no longer able or no longer present. So, my first project began with my grandfather's death. I realized that after someone is gone, their life often becomes a set of narratives that others can reshape. Between 2023 and 2025, I collected oral histories and revisited places he once lived. Photography became my way of approaching a time I didn't experience and of testing how an image can carry speculation rather than certainty. This research became a handmade book where photographs and writing move in fragments instead of a straight timeline. In parallel, I made an installation inspired by the moment I saw him in intensive care, kept up live by machines. That work pushed me to think about agency. When a body depends on a system, who holds the right to interpret life? And after completing this project, I felt the need to bring the question closer. I had been studying memory through someone else's absence, but I want to understand how instability and displacement operate inside my own experience in the present. That shift led to the lingering shadow, which grew from my experience of moving between 2 disconnected environments in my childhood. Here, I treat space as an active participant rather than a background. I was interested in how anxiety can be produced by spatial separation and loss of control, even without a visible event. Technically, I built the visual logic through depth mapping. Visibility becomes a measure of perceived control. What feels close is bright and legible. What feels out of reach dissolves into darkness and noise. I wanted the work to behave like anxiety itself, not a story, but a condition that shapes how you see. Working with space has made me realize something. Even when my subject was me, I was still keeping emotion at a distance, translating it into structure. So in the next project, I try to move closer to emotion itself and test how vulnerability could be carried through photographic language. So, in the sharpness of fading, I used personal emotional experience as material and treated blur and incompleteness as a form of emotional accuracy. Instead of seeing photography as proof, I began to treat it as soft evidence, something that suggests intimacy without fully establishing it. Screenshots, partial views, and unstable images are not accidents here. They become the visual language of relationships that can't be fully owned or narrated, only felt in fragments. The work is less about describing what happened and more about preserving how I felt to remember it. The Annihilated grows out of these 3 projects and shifts the focus toward objects. I look at things that exist during growing up and become an abandoned kind of inheritance. Writing on a door, a blanket, a school uniform, a campus card, a love letter, and chat history. I produced 6 short films, each centered on one relic. They don't reconstruct events, they present the objects as a witness. The narrative, the narrative is linear and meaning emerges through echoes between objects rather than through chronology. The installation extends this logic into physical space. A server-driven screen rotates in response to proximity sensing, and touch designer switches images status across devices. I'm not interested in direct interaction as choice making. I'm interested in viewing time as participation. where you stop and how long you stay becomes the most honest action. And at Goldsmith, I want to deepen this inquiry through a more critical and experimental approach to practice based research, especially around object led narration and installation as a thinking structure rather than a display format. Thank you for watching.